welcome to our March leadership, incubating leadership conversation. These conversations are organized by the Leadership Forum community, a nonprofit 501c3 focused on expanding conscious leadership. You can learn more about the organization or find ways to get involved by visiting our website at leadershipforumcommunity.org or inquiring within the chat. My name is Matthew. I'm an officer within the community, and I'm pleased to present our topic of discussion today, discovering the who, culture insights for leaders. I will definitely introduce our speaker very shortly, but since the Leadership Forum is an international and very diverse organization, we'd love to take a moment in the beginning to really just have what we call a diversity moment, where it's a time to reflect and really appreciate all the different diversity and inclusion that we want to foster as a community and that people bring to our organization. So with that, I will pass it to Rebecca and let her share her diversity moment.
Great, thanks so much, Matthew. So one of the things that I wanted to share in terms of the diversity moment is just a question to think about that you can use yourself or take back with your teams. But the question around how am I privileged? And this question came about because recently, so I'm from New Jersey, close to New York City in the United States. And I recently went with my family to the British Virgin Islands. And while I was there, I had a chance to speak with some of the locals about their environment, the challenges they face, their culture. And it was really interesting to hear about some of the challenges they have. For example, having access to money. There aren't ATMs on the island that I was at. They installed an ATM, but it wasn't working. So it wasn't really easy for people who work there or live there to get money. Likewise, it wasn't easy for travelers to get money, and that impacted their ability to make money. Whereas here in New Jersey, we have ATMs, on like almost every corner, there's a bank. So that's one example. Another example is that the children on the island where I was staying, because of the storm Irma, a few years back, their school the structure wasn't safe, and they had to do school above a restaurant in town. And so just thinking about like how that type of issue doesn't really exist in my area. If we did have flooding in our area, but in September, but it didn't impact our school so much. And even when it did, our kids still had multiple options in terms of where they could go to learn. So internet service, being able to access internet service and just job opportunities. I talked to some of the locals who said that they went to university in the US, and when they came back to their islands, there weren't a lot of job opportunities where they could apply the skills and the knowledge they learned. And just through these conversations, I kept thinking about the privileges I have. And one story that I heard from one of the locals, islanders, was about when the storm, when Irma hit and like destroyed their island, how a lot of the visitors from other countries came back and they gave their money, they gave their resources to help the islanders. So it was what I thought about was they had privilege, they had money, they had resources, and they had enjoyed the beauty of these islands and the all that the islands had to give, and they used their privilege for good. And so the question that I wanted to share in this diversity moment is, how are you privileged? And you can think about this on an individual level with individuals, with teams within your organization, or even just globally. How are you privileged, and how might you be able to use that privilege for good? So if you could just take a moment, even if it's just raising awareness of how am I privileged, and just share in the chat, that would be great. Just one way that you're privileged. Extra credit if you can share how you might use that privilege for good. Oh, thanks for writing in, Sue. Excellent. Yes, having time is a wonderful privilege, and it's good to see you're using it for volunteering. Love that, Ken. And Ken shares that he went to a small private liberal arts college and can use that for mentoring. Excellent. Garth, I'm privileged to have received an excellent education, and I can share that privilege by teaching others. Excellent, excellent. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing. Diana, as a white woman, I've never been unnecessarily followed in a convenience store or stopped by a state trooper, even when I deserved it. I try to express gratefulness for this every day. Thank you for sharing, Diana. Awesome. Well, thank you. I know don't want to take up too much time, but thank you for everyone who's sharing, and feel free to read through these great examples and just keep that diversity moment in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. Is we all have our own set of privilege, whether we realize it or not. In some cases, and everyone, just keeping in mind that everyone has a different experience. So be in mind for that. Thank you for sharing. Today, I do want to have a special introduction for our provocateur for this morning session or this afternoon session. We have Ann Hunnitz, who is a notable member in the community and somebody that I've had the pleasure of working with over the past couple of years within the community. But Anna spent her career building project management teams in major financial, insurance, and manufacturing organizations. She's had a full career and now within retirement, and has been one of the founding officers of the Leadership Forum community. Anne gains energy from working with leaders and who have the vision to make change happen. Her passion is to incorporate basic human needs into the future-focused conscious leadership and sustainable organization cultures. So even outside of her bio, Anne has just been a great help just bringing this organization together behind the scenes for many of you that may not know or haven't had the pleasure of working with Anne. So looking forward to her session today. She's very knowledgeable and has tons of experience to glean off of. So with that, Anne, I will let you take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Matthew, for that introduction. And I'm so glad to be here with you all today to talk about a passion of mine, and that's culture. So culture is all around us. It's like the air that we breathe, and so we don't always think about it. It just is. And no matter where we work, live, or play, we're dealing with culture. For organizations of any kind, whether it be a for-profit, non-for-profit, school, community organization, when they're embarking on a path to decide who they are or who they want to be, looking at culture is an important undertaking. Understanding where certain aspects of the culture are coming from and their impact is essential to create a path for change. Only by understanding the current state of the organization are they able to imagine that improved future state and design a roadmap for that journey. So culture is critical to any organization or in any human community. Culture truly defines how we live together as humans. It is true for our families, our communities, and our workplaces. It delineates how we live and work together. It sets the boundaries for the group, who's in the group and who's out. Think about ID badges, and when you have employees and contractors in an organization, what's the difference? It provides a sense of belonging. One of the first things people ask is, what do you do and where do you work? It defines our relationships. Who can we trust and who are we allowed to share information with? It allows for cohesive, loyal working groups. We form groups by working together and getting to know each other, and that makes company loyalty. It sets the rules for how people are expected to behave and allows for course correction or enforcement. What happens when we don't behave as expected? Is there disciplinary action or feedback that brings us back into the culture? And sometimes a culture can drive people away if it's too difficult to navigate. So why has culture become such a hot topic, and why now? One of the key issues is rapid change that's taking place. It's creating turmoil and impacting overall cultures in many places throughout the world. We've got the pandemic going. We've got politics that are impacting cultures, war, immigration, trade routes and embargoes, climate change and generational shifts. All of these things are impacting culture around us. And we're seeing an increased focus on culture in organizations, and it comes about when there is a lack of engagement. People are not feeling connected to their work. They're feeling burnt out and they've lost interest. There's an intense and need to innovate and to be agile in order to compete. It requires that people shift gears and operate in new ways and use new tools. Workplaces are structured differently, including more remote work. And technology is moving really fast. People's work is changing. There's computers, robotics, AI that are moving in to take over the repetitive work that people did. And now we need to change how we show up at work and how we contribute to an organization. This means people need to change and processes need to change. Employees' expectations are changing. Younger generations have different expectations of the work than their parents did. They are looking for more meaningful work and a balance between work and family and free time. People tend to move from job to job. They're driven to find the right place, someplace where they can feel needed and comfortable and be successful. And this has been exacerbated by the pandemic, and what we're seeing is the Great Resignation. With baby boomers retiring, there's a shortage of workers and workers with the right skills. And workers might be employees, they might be consultants, they might be temps, they might be remote. So there's a lot of different ways that people are engaging in work these days. And that changes people's attachment to the organization and how they participate in the culture. So Matthew's going to throw up a poll, I believe, with these two questions on it. So you can tell me a little bit about what you think of your own culture. We'll see. Well, good for you. Nobody's in a toxic culture. That's a good thing to see. We have a lot of very goods, which is also good. So I'm happy that we're seeing things on the top end. And people have also heard about people talking about culture when they make decisions. So that's a good thing also. Glad to see. So let's move on then. Okay, so even though none of you are, even though none of you are living in a toxic culture, I wanted to talk a little bit about it. So there was a recent article called Toxic Culture is Driving the Great Resignation. And that it's written by Dr. David Saul and Charlie Saul and Ben Schweig, and it's published in the MIT Sloan Management Review. And they did a study, and the results of their study, it says that the top reason for people leaving their jobs is a toxic culture. And the 5 components of toxic cultures are being non-inclusive, unfairness because of identity, some aspects of a person's identity, disrespectful, being treated like a cog or like cattle or insects, or basically dehumanizing people, unethical and dishonest behavior, not being trustworthy, cutthroat, people going out of their way to undercut people or devalue their accomplishments, and abusive management, creating a hostile or threatening work environment. So more than anything else, a toxic culture is going to drive people out of their jobs. And toxicity can exist in an organization overall, or it can just exist in a department or a team, and that will drive people out just as effectively. And the impacts of this to the workers is that they have a loss of sleep, they get depressed, they're 35 to 55% more likely to have a serious illness. And it spreads to others in the family because people take their anxiety home from work with them. And leaders don't often account for the cost of a toxic culture, the cost of loss of talent and having to replace that talent, but also the reputational harm that the organization suffers as a result of it. So basically, healthy organizations are more successful and they're more profitable, and a culture is part of that. So cultures are complex. Part of culture is what happens inside the organization and how it happens. Everyone influences culture by how they show up to work. It's a combination of all of those influences that really make up the culture of an organization. Have you ever been part of a team where a new person shows up, or maybe a new leader, and they may change the entire atmosphere of the team, either for good or bad? When it comes to leaders, they have an even greater influence on how that team operates. Beyond what happens internally, there are external influences that are constantly impacting that internal culture, many of which are beyond the organization's control. Because culture is so complex, it shouldn't be something that's left to grow and change without direction or guidance. To be successful, an organization should be intentional about their culture. That means discovering the who. Who do we say we are? How do we act? Who do others think we are? And what components are influencing our culture? What are the sources of the positive and the negative aspects of your culture? To make culture intentional, it should be part of the organization's strategic plan. Most companies have a strategic plan, but not everyone includes culture in those decisions. Culture needs to be considered whenever we're making significant decisions, asking questions like, how will this change the culture for our employees? Will it change how the public and our customers view us? And will people still want to work here? Culture change isn't easy. It means that people need to change as a group, and people are inherently resistant to change, and getting them all to change at once is even more difficult. So to be intentional about culture, the first thing to do is consider your history. What are the cultural remnants that exist from the history of the organization? And then determine which ones of those are beneficial for the future and which needs to be retired. No organization starts with a blank slate. Even a startup has the culture that's brought with it by the founding leaders. So most organizations have a longer history and they have much more complex roots that need to be considered. What functions do those cultural roots serve? Are those legacy influences still relevant? And how are they perpetuated in the current day? What serves a purpose and what just gets in the way and needs to be gotten rid of? Building on top of the history are the intentional beliefs and values that are supposed to be driving the culture. These are the things that are on the wall and in the annual report. They should convey who we are. Are the values well-defined, written, and accessible? Does everyone know them? Do they live them at work? How often are they referenced and used in decision-making? What happens to change? Then we have to look at what happens to change culture over time. These changes may or may not align with the official values and beliefs. So we can have planned or engineered changes. The latest fad in management or org structure can be put in place. Implementing new technologies creates change. Mergers and acquisitions create change. There's multiple things that organizations do in a deliberate way. And then there's organic changes. Series of leaders coming in at all different levels. Each leader brings in a little piece of culture and changes things. The growth of an organization where you've got multiple new people coming in at the same time, each one of those has a small impact. And then you've got changes to business environments. Things like new products, new suppliers, new customers, new technologies that are all kind of morphing to make these organic changes take place. So maybe instead, Matthew, in the interest of time, instead of using a poll for this one, we'll just have everybody stop for a moment and think about these three questions. Can you state the values of your organization? If you want to, you can put the answers in the chat. And does anyone in your organization ever call someone out who's not living the values? If there's a leader who's not living the values, does anybody ever call them out? And are your leaders modeling the values? If you say yes to all of those, you're in good shape. Okay. So while you think about that, let's dig into the internal influences of a culture. If we were to create a graphic of an organizational culture, we would start with the boundaries. Who's in and who's out? And the boundary is really the stakeholders, such as the board members, owners, and stockholders. They are the oval outline of the graphic. They provide the financial basis and the high-level direction to the organization and can have varying degrees of influence. They function as the boundaries of the organization. Next, we have the values and the beliefs. The stated values and beliefs of the organization are the background influence. They provide an underlying color that may or may not have a strong impact on how people behave within the organization. Then we've got the type of business. That's another influencing component. Is it a competitive business? Is it highly regulated? Is it high risk? Or does the business operate more freely? How we do things around here is one more component of cultural influence. It not only includes how things are currently done, but the written and unwritten rules, procedures, and processes that have grown through tradition and necessity. Then we've got a huge influence from the employees. They are the substance of the culture and have come with infinite variety. How the employees work together and treat each other is the essence of the culture. The leaders are employees, but they also have a stronger impact because of their authority within the organization. In essence, the kind of people we are is within this culture. How do we treat each other? How do we work together? Each of these influences vary in size and intensity in different organizations. Every organization will look a little bit different. Now we look at the external influences. First, we have our environment. The environment includes where the organization is physically located and the condition of the facilities. Are there environmental concerns of weather and pollution, like Rebecca talked about when there was a hurricane that came through? Are you prone to hurricanes? Are buildings safe and comfortable? Environment can also include a technology environment. How stable are the essential communication links that your organization has? And how does the organization contribute to the health or decline of the environment in the community? Then we do have the community. Organizations live in local communities, countries, and even globally. However it is defined for the organization, the community where it lives needs to be considered when assessing culture. Employees bring their culture to work with them. Customers live in communities and their cultures define how they interact with the organization. How the organization supports the community and contributes becomes part of their reputation. The organization also exists in an external market, an economic environment that impacts how it needs to operate. In a rapidly changing environment, it's essential for an organization to have a culture that's adaptable and can change quickly. Markets are prone to high risk, and if there's heavy competition, how will that impact the culture, and does it need to be highly adaptable to survive? Then you've got suppliers. Businesses are dependent on suppliers who impact how the organization can deliver goods or information or services. And if the suppliers aren't very responsive, then the organization can't be responsive to their customers. And then we have the customers. Customers greatly influence an organization. They're the reason for the organization's existence. Their demands are very important and shape how the organization does business internally and externally. They can also put pressure on organizational values during times of societal stress. Think about the conversations that took place in the businesses who pulled out of Russia in the past few weeks. They had some serious conversations about what this would do to their business and their reputations. So now it's time for you guys to do some talking. I've done my talking. So have some questions here that we will post in the chat. And we're going to take, let's see, we can take probably about 10, 12 minutes for this, for you guys to go into smaller groups. Matthew's going to work his magic and do that. And have some time to talk about the hidden influences in your culture. Does your culture align with the values? And what would you like to see change and why? If you could, may I have your magic wand? What would you like to see change? So what did you all talk about? Any interesting aha moments or questions that came up?
I liked what Ken had to say in our session. He was talking about that one of the things that his company is big on is the people skills and being able to collaborate, and they do consulting work to other companies. But he also talked about the dark side and how it's almost to a fault. So that the dark side is more about people are hesitant to give each other feedback. So that kind of, gets in the way. So we had a good discussion about that. And then I talked about, working with the different companies. It was just like, so, you do one merger and, so you take the old and the new and, you just get to a point of getting your culture ready and then you do another merger. And so, so now you have to work with that new culture. It gets very challenging from that aspect.
And one of the things that can doom a merger is if you've got two cultures that just can't merge. And that can really be a challenge. Anybody else?
Ann, hi, how are you? I was in the room with Diana and we touched upon, we're not sure if it's hidden or not, but it's definitely something that for my own, like Rebecca, we have a small business and up spiral leadership, and we've been hearing about this certification called Certified B Corp, and there are only maybe a couple of thousand of them in the world, and we're talking about that being one day potentially customers might want to work more with companies that are certified B Corp, and meaning it's a measurement of for-profit business that are, that determine how socially and environmentally conscious they are. So, and I heard it's a very rigorous process to get certified, but that is something that I think, Rebecca, you're nodding your head, we're dreaming about for our organization, and how we thought that could really help shape an organization's culture, how we show up for not just for our employees, but for our customers and our communities. So that was something that we touched upon, and how that, customers can really influence that and make us as an organization think about how we really want to show up in this world.
Okay, very good. Got time for maybe one more question?
Well, I was with Garth and Anne Marie, and what I found interesting is we talked about leadership and how leaders can it's also possible to go bottom up versus just depending on top down.
Right.
So the people inside a company can try to influence the leaders to impact how the culture would be. I don't know, Anne Marie and Garth, if you want to add to that.
So one thing that Chad and I were talking about was about leaders, and the fact that sometimes people's job satisfaction is more tied to their immediate manager than it is to top leadership. And if you've got, and that kind of talks to what you're talking about, managers at any level have an opportunity to establish a culture within their own team, even if it's contrary, and it can be for good or ill. They can create a terrible culture and then people want to leave that team, even though the organization itself might not be so bad. And they can also influence up if they create a good culture within their team and demonstrate that. The challenge is that even though that team might have a good culture, they still have to work with people who are operating in maybe a more difficult culture, and it can become hard for them to communicate across the organization. But yeah, the immediate manager has a lot of impact. Yes, the top person does, the CEO does, and they can trickle it down, but at the different levels, you'll see different cultures emerge that might not be in alignment. So, okay, well, let's move on then. We've got just a few minutes left. I have to reshare here. Okay, we're just going to have to go from here. Sorry. So, when we look at a cultural portrait, we've been exploring the different influences, but in order to see what a culture really looks like, I want to think about it as a portrait. We have actually started a cultural representation on prior slides, and I created that oval, and you can see it here underneath that light blue oval with the gold border on it. I don't have because I'm not in presentation, I don't have my animations going, so you'll have to bear with me. Anyway, I created that oval that represents the organization, and the light blue, is the values and beliefs that we talked about as being the background. That color represents the strength and the characteristics of the values and how strong or thick the border is around your organization, and does it react to external influences. But then, you can also have it such that the border is thicker or darker, like the dark blue that you see underneath here. You can have the background be green or red, depending on how people perceive the values or the environment. So painting a cultural portrait is a process that requires examination and provides a view into your current culture. It generates discussion about who we really are. It reveals the greatest sources of cultural impact, both positive and negative. And then it opens the discussion about who do we want to be? So culture is a complex combination of influences and integrated colors and shapes that create a cultural portrait of the who of an organization. The details for going through this process is, takes more time than we have today, but this is one example of how a culture portrait might look. The process requires input from all levels of the organization, and it may reveal inconsistent cultural pockets, like we talked about, within the organization. However, gaining insight into the cultural influences reveals invaluable information into the forces that are driving the organization, both internally and externally. Only then can leaders determine how they can change their culture to achieve their desired results. If an organization is looking for a strategic advantage in the marketplace, both to attract and retain talent, and they need to portray that desired image to their customers and their suppliers. They need to define a culture that will make them a preferred organization. This is true if you're selling in a competitive market, running a school, or a community organization. Every organization is trying to achieve their goals and needs the people and the talent and the customers in order to be sustainable. So one last thing, and that is to consider the artist's perspective of this. Objectivity is really hard for those who live in the culture. It requires significant introspection for leaders and employees. It is uncomfortable for us to look in the mirror under a bright light. And looking at an organizational culture is no different. Outside perspectives are necessary to complete the picture. Because of this, it helps to follow a defined process that allows for introspection and drives conversation. Organizations don't live in a bubble, and they need to understand their culture in the context of both internal and external influences to gain a more objective view. So with that, I would encourage you to lead the vision for your company to discover their who and define the current portrait and how it contributes to your success, and take the next step to enhance your organizational culture to meet the challenges that we will face in the future. So thank you. If you'd like to learn more about creating a cultural portrait, you can go to my blog website, annhunnitz.com, and read some articles posted there, or you can get in touch with Leadership Forum, and I'd be happy to chat with you. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ann. This session has been great, and we hope that everyone had some good takeaways that they can apply in their own leadership walk going forward, especially within their own organizations, whether that's a bottom-up approach or a top-down approach, depending on where you're at within that. So just a quick little housekeeping, we are a 501c3 and we work hard to bring these sessions to you all monthly. With that, the QR code that you see on the left side is our donation QR code if you are able to contribute, and that way we can continue bringing you, great sessions and other events as a Leadership Forum community organization. I will also mention that in the chat, I just pasted a survey. If it's not monetarily, the gift of feedback is definitely invaluable as well. And we utilize this to continue improving and making sure that we're bringing the best content for you as members and audience viewers. So you can also become a member, which gives you access to other courses through our Participate platform and gives you kind of the heads up for summit events and things like that coming up in the summer. That is the QR code here on the right side. And you're definitely welcome to go to our leadershipforumcommunity.org website to learn more. If you want to be in contact, feel free to message me here in chat. And feel free to message whoever to keep the conversation going if you were able to connect with somebody during the session. And other than that, for the interest of time, thank you. And we'll keep the line open for a few minutes if anyone wants to chime in with questions or comments.